Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere golden, literally. You find yourself beneath the enormous clay arch of a market gate in a faraway land, the Empire of Mali, somewhere in the 14th century. The air is dry but rich with the scent of roasted millet, camel sweat, and a whiff of something faintly metallic. It's loud but not chaotic, just layers of sound, drums in the distance, clinking wooden bowls, a goat that refuses to negotiate quietly. Welcome to one of the largest and wealthiest empires in medieval Africa. You're in a city like Niani or maybe even Timbuktu, where trade is king and gold flows, not in coins, not in bars, but in specks, flakes, and shimmering dust. It's tucked inside pouches, traded by the pinch and almost never minted. You could be standing next to a literal millionaire right now, and unless they sneeze and glitter erupts from their tunic, you'd never know. You shift your bag and walk through the gateway into the inner city. Everything feels baked by the sun, mud walls glowing ochre, cobbled streets like warm brick toast underfoot. You're here to trade, or at least to learn how people trade. And yes, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this economy unless you know how to haggle in 3 languages and measure gold by sight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your country and local time in the comments. I'm always curious how far our little time machine travels. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You keep walking, past stalls built from woven mats and sun-bleached timber. Women in brightly patterned wrappers call out offers for calabash bowls, thick blocks of salt, even bundles of herbs meant to chase away headaches or ungrateful spirits. A vendor gently fans flies off a dish of dried fish that looks, well, dry. There's no currency exchange booth, no vault, no tellers, but everyone here knows the value of what they hold. You notice something: people don't hand each other money. No one flicks a coin or counts bills. Instead, there are small leather pouches passed between fingers, often without a word. Some are tied with braided fiber cords, others stitched from hide. Inside, gold dust, real gold, sometimes grains, sometimes fine powder, just enough to coat your fingertips in sparkle. And here's the twist: no 2 pouches weigh quite the same. Some historians think the lack of standardized coins was a clever way to keep transactions personal. Others argue that coins would have corroded or been culturally irrelevant. Either way, this is a trade system built not on coinage but trust, or maybe peer pressure. One misplaced flake, and your trading reputation vanishes faster than a mirage. A young boy passes you, holding a narrow strip of wood carved into scales, with tiny copper weights nestled in its groove. He's likely an apprentice, a human calculator trained to estimate value by eye and weight alone. It's the quiet math of trade. What's 3 pinches of gold worth in salt, or in a bolt of indigo-dyed cloth? You glance up at a rooftop, where a goat has somehow climbed, don't ask, and spot a griot or oral historian sitting cross-legged, reciting family lineages and clan deals going back centuries. People toss him a few cowrie shells or a sliver of cola nut as payment. Here, memory is currency too. Lose your family's trade story and your business credibility dissolves. Most intriguing of all, you sense a subtle social choreography in every transaction. You don't just hand over your pouch and say, "How much for the lentils?" No, you kneel slightly, you place the pouch down, you avert your eyes. Then the seller inspects it behind a cloth curtain, perhaps in silence. It's part ritual, part privacy, part paranoia. And you get it. A system like this only works when gold is both visible and invisible. Too flashy and it invites theft. Too hidden and suspicion blooms. Which brings us to the unspoken rules of this economy. Display gold modestly, weigh it privately, and never, ever blow on your hand after counting flakes. That's how fights start. You stop by a woman selling fabrics dyed with mud and fermented leaves, her stall shaded by woven millet stalks. She smiles, offers you a bundle, then gestures toward a pouch looped at your side. You hesitate. How much is this worth again? How do you even ask without offending her? A local child tugs your sleeve, giggling. If you need to ask, he says in Bambara, you can't afford it. Sleepy sarcasm is alive and well in medieval Mali, apparently. Here's a neat historical fact. During its peak under Mansa Musa, the Mali Empire may have supplied over half the world's gold. That's not legend. It's in the records of Arab chroniclers like al-Umari, who claimed the empire was so flush with gold that Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca literally devalued currency in Cairo for a decade. And yet, they never minted their own coins. Historians still argue why. Was it because the gold was too pure and soft to survive the clinking wear and tear of circulation? Was there simply no demand for coins when dust and nuggets worked just fine? Or was it a deliberate cultural choice, a rejection of foreign monetary systems in favor of something more intimate and flexible? Whatever the reason, here you are, in a thriving city powered by invisible wealth, intricate memory, and leather pouches stitched tighter than some modern bank vaults. You brush past a spice cellar, inhale the scent of crushed coriander and dried chili, and step into the shade of a stone-walled alley. Ahead, someone waves you over. He's got something to show you, something shimmering. You follow, heart thudding, not out of fear but curiosity. After all, who needs coins when you've got trust, dust, and a good pouch? You duck under a faded woven awning as the man beckons you forward, and suddenly the sunlight cuts off. Inside, the little shop is cool and dim, lit by narrow shafts of light slipping through reed slats. Your eyes adjust to the glow of golden motes floating lazily in the air, dust from the road. Not quite. He opens his palm, and there it is. A glittering pinch of gold dust. He lets it fall slowly into a shallow wooden bowl, and the particles scatter like sugar across the bottom. You lean in, squinting, then realize this is money. No clinking coins, no banknotes, just a glittery drift of the stuff kingdoms fight over. The man gestures toward a small balance scale on a low bench. It's not much, just two wooden dishes suspended by thread, with tiny iron weights nearby, some shaped like geometric pebbles, others carved to resemble animals. There's no need for precision instruments when your fingers know the language of mass and gravity by touch alone. He lifts one of the weights and gently tips a spoonful of gold dust onto the opposite pan. You hear the faintest creak of thread tightening as equilibrium is reached. No words exchanged, just nods. The trade is complete. Welcome to the economy of ancient Mali. Everyone here, traders, farmers, smiths, even wandering poets, understands gold dust. It's both common and sacred. You'd be hard-pressed to find a merchant in 14th century Mali who didn't carry a small pouch of it sewn into their clothing or tucked behind a belt. And yet, it's more complicated than it looks. You quickly learn that gold dust isn't always as pure as it seems. That's why every deal comes with its own flavor of suspicion. Merchants inspect the grain texture, smell the dust, even rub it between thumb and forefinger like master chefs sampling spice. Counterfeiters occasionally try to mix in bronze shavings or fine yellow sand, but a trained trader will sniff out the fakes, sometimes literally. One trader you meet later claims he can tell real gold by tasting it. You don't ask how often he swallows his profits. But even if you do have authentic gold, there's no such thing as fixed pricing. One pinch of dust could buy you a dozen dates in one town and just a few dried locusts in another. And that's not even accounting for the value of where the gold came from. Gold from Bambuk, for example, has a reputation for purity, while gold dust from further south is treated with slight suspicion, possibly just regional snobbery. Or maybe the grains sparkle slightly less. Who knows? Interestingly, most ordinary people never see large nuggets or ingots. Those are hoarded by nobles, weighed in secret chambers, or offered in tribute to rulers and distant allies. For daily trade, it's all about portability. How much dust you can conceal in a pouch without looking suspicious, or spilling it in the middle of the market, which, by the way, has happened, and it's said that when a child dropped a pouch near Gao, 3 chickens and a goat chased him for 20 minutes. Local legend? Probably. But you're still tying your pouch extra tight. In some regions of Mali, traders develop a habit of tapping the pouch before a deal, not to shake the gold, but to signal readiness. It's a subtle gesture like opening a wallet or flashing a credit card. And when a deal is struck, you never just dump the dust into a stranger's hand. That would be uncouth. Instead, it's measured into a tiny wooden bowl, clay scoop, or leather dish, each pre-weighed, often with ornamental markings that double as a merchant's signature. Some of the more elite traders even commission specially carved weighing sets from blacksmiths. One merchant shows you a miniature brass gazelle with hollow legs that hold hidden counterweights. It's equal parts functional and fabulous. You consider stealing it, but then you remember again, you're not built for this economy. Here's your mainstream historical anchor. The Mali Empire, from the 13th to 16th century, controlled one of the richest networks of gold fields in the world, especially the Bambuk and Bura regions. Arab chroniclers and North African traders documented the flow of dust and nuggets with awe. Gold was everywhere. And yet, coins were barely used, even after Islam and Arabic influence spread through the empire. Which brings us to a curious scholarly question. Historians still debate why the empire never minted gold coins for domestic use. Was it a cultural aversion to fixed currency? Did decentralized trade make coinage inefficient? Or was gold simply too soft and valuable to be turned into everyday money? Some argue that coinage would have destabilized the region's gift-based trade culture. Others suggest the infrastructure for mints simply didn't exist or wasn't worth the trouble. Whatever the reason, Mali built a system of astonishing scale without a single coin purse. Impressive, confusing, definitely not convenient at a roadside snack stall. Now let's turn to an overlooked corner of this economic theater, the women. You might assume the gold economy was the realm of men, but nope, women were power players, especially in market life. Many ran their own stalls, negotiated their own trades, and managed family wealth through those very same gold pouches. There's even anecdotal evidence that women sometimes served as intermediaries, holding gold during larger exchanges to maintain neutrality. Picture this: 2 men argue over salt prices, and a grandmother with a pouch full of glitter calmly decides who gets how much dust. Her word, final. You try to imagine walking into a modern bank and handing your life savings to someone's gray-tan. Doesn't compute, but here, it works. You step out of the shop into the full light of day again, eyes squinting against the gold leaf shimmer of the dust still clinging to your sleeve. The trade isn't just in what people sell, it's in how they weigh, measure, and trust. And as you head back toward the main thoroughfare, a little boy runs past you, giggling, holding a tiny pouch above his head like a prize. Behind him, a very angry chicken gives chase. Yep, some legends are probably true. You follow the chicken chase until it turns down a side alley, feathers flapping like the banners above Timbuktu's older mosques. A few chuckles ripple through the crowd, but no one seems especially surprised. Gold dust and poultry, both highly mobile and remarkably valued in their own way. As you meander back toward the central square, you begin to notice something strange. In this economy built on sparkly dust, there's another substance people seem just as obsessed with. Huge white blocks stacked in carts, carried on backs, balanced precariously atop donkeys. Salt. Big, rectangular, unappetizing bricks of salt, and everyone's treating them like they're precious. You inch closer to a trader's stall where one of these slabs rests, gleaming faintly under a layer of sand. You touch it. It's heavy, gritty, and a little sticky from the desert air. Not much to look at, but worth its weight in gold. Literally. Here's a mainstream fact worth tucking under your pillow tonight. In much of the Mali Empire, especially closer to the Saharan edge, salt wasn't just seasoning. It was currency, a trading tool, a symbol of health and status. It preserved food, replenished what the desert heat stole from your body, and crucially, couldn't be mined locally. It had to be imported, often from as far north as Tagheza or Talyudeni, both of which were basically giant salt quarries in the middle of nowhere. These salt slabs, called amylase, could weigh up to 90 kilograms. They were carried hundreds of miles across searing desert, strapped to camels, traded in bulk and broken into chunks once they reached the cities. And here in Mali, you'll find people who will trade their gold dust for salt, sometimes in ratios that outsiders found baffling. One Arab traveler, Ibn Battuta, famously noted the volume of salt being traded in Gao and was shocked that it fetched nearly the same price as gold. And now you watch as a merchant slices off a hunk with a small hatchet and hands it to a customer who, in turn, offers, what else? A pouch of gold dust. The balanced scale appears again, but this time it's used to weigh the salt, not the gold. Salt's value is surprisingly slippery. In wetter regions of the empire, it's abundant and cheap. But out here, near the desert's lip, it's liquid white gold. People will travel for weeks to trade for it, fight over it, and hoard it as a survival tool. A single slab can preserve meat for a village, or give a caravan just enough electrolytes to make it to the next oasis. And here's your fringe tidbit. Salt wasn't always just traded. In some areas, it was gifted ceremonially, offered to ancestors, or used in spiritual protections. Some travelers even describe children in desert towns being given salt crumbs as treats. Not exactly candy, but hey, different times. You pause to watch a group of traders unload salt from a caravan. The camels groan like creaky furniture, their backs lined with padded saddles that now reek of mineral dust and camel sweat. The caravan leader walks up with the slow, deliberate gait of someone who spent far too much time with sand in their shoes. His robe is stiff with dust, and his eyes are red-rimmed from the sun, but he smiles when offered a sip of sour milk from a gourd. This is how it works. The gold dust comes from the south, the salt comes from the north. Mali sits in the middle like the world's fanciest intersection and collects the toll. You start to see the genius of this system, not despite its lack of coins, but because of it. Salt can be weighed and split, traded by chunk or grain, just like gold dust. It's tangible, honest. You can lick it if you're not convinced. No one does that with coins, not twice anyway. One of the traders is telling a story. You lean in and catch pieces of it, about a legendary camel who could smell salt a day's journey away. He swears it's true. Another swears he once saw a salt slab so pure it made a man weep. You're not sure if he meant from awe or from dehydration, but either way, these aren't just supply chain stories. They're folklore, culture, value shaped into myth. And there's something else. Notice how the gold and salt rarely change hands at the same time. There's a system of silent trade in some border areas, where traders leave their goods at a designated spot, retreat, and wait for the counterpart to leave an acceptable amount in return. If the offer isn't enough, the first trader simply walks away. No haggling, no shouting, just quiet adjustments. Historians still argue whether this method was primarily used to avoid conflict, to bridge language barriers, or as a ritual of trust. Whatever the reason, it's oddly elegant and very sleep-friendly if you're thinking in ASMR terms. Suddenly, a boy next to you pulls out a chunk of salt from his satchel, shaped into a rough animal. It's clearly been carved. For luck, he says proudly before scampering off. So salt's not just food or currency, it's sculpture, charm, identity. You rest against a shaded wall and consider this. Two of the most powerful materials in the Mali Empire, gold and salt, are both small, granular, and traded without coins. Neither is stamped with a king's face. Neither fits neatly into a pocket, but both are everywhere. Nearby, a woman takes out a pinch of gold dust and carefully pours it into a split gourd. She then places a pebble-sized chunk of salt into the other half. It's a swap. No arguing, no math, just mutual value, recognized instantly. The air begins to shimmer with heat as the sun arcs higher, and you realize your skin tastes a little salty. You reach into your pouch and check the dust. Still there, still golden. But if you had to choose, right now, right here, you might go for the salt instead. After all, it's not just flavor, it's life. The sun continues its lazy climb overhead, the heat pressing down like a thick wool blanket left out in the desert too long. You find yourself wandering into a quieter part of the market, away from the bustle of salt slabs and shimmering gold, into a side lane paved in packed earth and shaded by tall baobab trees. And just as you're about to consider napping under one of them, a voice calls out, a low, rhythmic voice, half song, half story. You follow the sound. Seated beneath a woven canopy is an older man in indigo-dyed robes, with silver rings on his fingers and a voice like warm sand. Around him, children and adults alike sit cross-legged in the dust, listening raptly. He's a griot, one of Mali's most important people. Not a king, not a priest, not a merchant, but in many ways more powerful than any of them. A griot is a walking library, a keeper of contracts, a living archive. In a land where paper is rare and coins are even rarer, it's the griots who hold Mali's memory, and that includes its economic memory. You sit at the edge of the circle quietly, and the griot smiles without breaking rhythm. He's midway through the lineage of a trader's family, reciting names, birthplaces, marriage alliances, and most crucially, what debts were owed and what payments were honored. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Griots, also known as Jelliw in the Mande language, were professional oral historians. They trained from a young age to memorize vast genealogies, business arrangements, and community agreements. Some could recite the family lines of hundreds of people, going back 10 or more generations, without ever writing a word. And here's the twist that keeps you awake. In the economy of ancient Mali, griots were often the witnesses to major trades and deals. No contract, no problem, just get a griot. Their memory held the weight of law. A caravan arrives with goods from the forested south, kola nuts, hides, even ivory, and the merchant greets the griot with a long string of compliments. Not because he's famous, though he might be, but because he's the one who remembers what was traded last season, and whether someone still owes someone else a gourd of shea butter, or worse, a favor. You shift in your seat and wonder how deals like that don't get lost in the haze of memory. The answer: training. Griots were raised inside storytelling families, with repetition, melody, and oral patterning as tools of the trade. They were often attached to noble households, but many also traveled freely, hired by traders and common folk alike to record, or recite, the details of economic life. You hear him say something curious. The salt arrived late, but the apology was accepted. He sent a basket of dried mango. That apparently counts. Welcome to one of Mali's most human economic features, flexibility. In a world without bank transfers or itemized receipts, context matters. So do gestures. Delays can be forgiven. Goods can be traded in kind. And a griot can vouch for your honesty or remind the village that you once forgot to deliver that second sack of millet 3 rainy seasons ago. Your debt, still unpaid. Which brings us to a quirky tidbit. Some griots were said to have selective memories, not due to error but as a service. If someone paid well, certain family embarrassments or forgotten debts might quietly vanish from the story. It wasn't bribery, more like strategic forgetting. Economists today might call it reputation management. Griots just called it discretion. You begin to see how deeply the economy and the culture intertwine. Gold dust can vanish, salt can melt, but a griot's memory, that's the vault. And if you lie about a trade or try to back out of a deal witnessed by a griot, good luck trading in this city again. Word spreads faster than a desert wind. And scholars still debate just how much power these storytellers truly held. Were they simply memory keepers or social regulators in disguise? Did they shape the economy through narrative, favoring certain clans and traders? Or were they neutral archivists, bound by cultural codes? You glance around and realize that every group of traders seems to have one griot nearby, or at least someone trained in the tradition. A sort of accountant-poet hybrid, humming softly as he listens to the traders speak, then nodding to confirm that yes, the same deal was made last harvest, And yes, the man still owes you 2 gourds of honey. It's oddly relaxing watching this system in action. No shouting, no ledgers, just quiet recognition and communal trust. If gold dust is the physical currency, griots are the social one. As the sun shifts, casting longer shadows across the packed earth street, the griot story slides into a song, something about a canoe that floated backward for 3 days because the merchant refused to pay his guide. Everyone laughs. The joke is old and accurate. You linger, watching as a young apprentice joins the older griot and mimics the rhythm of the story, learning not just the facts but the tone, the flow, the emotional cadence. It's history and economics and bedtime storytelling all braided into one. Eventually, the griot leans back, sips from a water gourd and closes his eyes for a moment. The crowd disperses, but his presence lingers, like a light breeze that remembers your name. You stand, brush the dust off your tunic, and glance once more at the man who could make, or unmake, an entire trade deal with a few carefully chosen words. No coins, no contracts, just memory, music, and the weight of trust. And now, you're about to see how people weigh that trust in something even more secretive than storytelling. Someone taps your shoulder. You're heading to the weighing house next, aren't you? Apparently, you are. You follow the tap on your shoulder, led by a wiry man with calloused hands and an expression that suggests he's seen more shady deals than you've eaten breakfasts. His name is Isaka, and he doesn't say much, just beckons with a tilt of the head and vanishes down an alley so narrow, even the sun can't quite squeeze through. This is no public marketplace. No salt slabs, no singing griots, just the quiet sound of sandals against dirt and the muffled clink of something very, very small. You're entering one of Mali's least flashy, most essential places, the weighing house. And unlike the bustle of the gold and salt exchange outside, everything here feels secret, calm, precise. It's the closest thing this economy has to a bank, and it smells like a mix of warm leather, iron, and anxiety. The room you enter is cool and dark. There are no signs, no guards, no decoration. Just 2 low tables, each holding a set of scales, wooden pans suspended by fiber strings, resting on frames carved from local hardwood. In one corner, a mat holds dozens of tiny metal weights. Some are round, others shaped like birds or insects, or even little abstract figurines that make you squint and wonder if one's just a very confused turtle. This is where the real business happens. Not just the flashy handovers in the sun, but the careful weighing of promises. And here's the trick, it's done in private. Isaka nods at a trader who steps forward with a leather pouch. It's no larger than a walnut, but it could contain a week's earnings or a month's, depending on the dust's purity. The pouch is untied and a small pinch is poured into a bowl. No words, just observation. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In Mali's trade economy, weighing stations, whether formal or improvised, were common in market towns. These weren't regulated banks in the modern sense, but trusted locations where experienced traders or designated weighers could assess the amount and quality of gold dust before a transaction. Some scales were portable, others were fixed in certain neighborhoods or near major trading crossroads. The goal wasn't centralization, it was consistency. Isaka places a tiny metal frog on one side of the scale, then slowly adds gold dust to the other. He doesn't blink. His hands don't shake. He watches until the pans hover perfectly level, then nods. The amount is verified. The dust is swept back into the pouch. The trade can now proceed somewhere else. And here's your quirky tidbit. Among the weights used in Mali, some were modeled after animals not for decoration, but as mnemonic devices. A frog weight might equal a full day's worth of labor. A lizard, maybe half that. Traders memorized value through shape, not number, a tactile system of accounting. It's elegant, personal, and faintly adorable. You take a closer look at the scales. They're simple, yes, but not crude. The materials are chosen carefully. The string must stretch just enough. The bowls must hang symmetrically. One traveler once wrote that a good scale in Mali was worth more than a sword, because both could kill you, but only one saved your reputation. And that's the point. This is a trust economy. Everything depends on how accurately your gold is weighed and how fairly your counterpart accepts the weight. You can't fake honesty here. Well, you can, but only once. Isaka shows you a broken pouch next. He pours out a little heap of dull, uneven flakes. They glitter faintly, but not like the last batch. He taps a bit of powder from the pile, places it on his fingertip and gives it a sniff. Too much river sand, he murmurs, and maybe some copper. He's right. You'd never have known, but he can tell by texture, scent, and even sound. Some say gold dust makes a slightly different noise when poured than other powders. You don't argue. You don't even try. Historians still argue how widespread gold adulteration was in ancient Mali. Some claim it was rare, policed by merchant guilds and social shame. Others believe it was common enough that entire local professions emerged to spot impurities. What is agreed upon is this: the ability to detect fake or diluted dust was vital to the empire's economic health. Without coins, without minting, trust had to weigh more than metal. Isaka motions you over. He hands you a tiny scoop made of bone and gestures for you to try weighing. You hesitate. What if you get it wrong? He shrugs as if to say, that's exactly how everyone starts. You scoop a little pile into the bowl. The scale tips violently. You try again. Too light. After the fourth attempt, the scale finally hovers. You glance up. Isaka is not impressed. But he nods, a nod of mild tolerance, a sleepy, reluctant acceptance that maybe, you're not completely useless. You take that as a win. Another trader enters the room, this one clearly wealthy. Robes with gold embroidery, sandals that look like they've never touched anything so vulgar as dirt. His pouch is larger, too. But again, no coins. Just more dust. Carefully weighed, politely hidden, just enough to buy land, goods, or even people's labor for months. And here's the detail no one writes about in textbooks. When someone pays in gold dust, they don't just measure it. They bless it, whisper to it, breathe over it. It's both transaction and tradition. And in a society where the economy rests on invisible standards, rituals are the only constants. Eventually, Isaka offers you a small leather pouch of your own. Inside is a little pinch of certified gold dust, not worth much, but more symbolic than valuable. To remember what's real, he says. You nod, carefully slipping it into your tunic pocket. It feels heavier than it is. Maybe because now you understand its true weight. Outside, the market continues to buzz. But here, behind the scenes, you've seen the delicate machinery of trust and measurement. No coins, no receipts. Just gold, dust, and quiet calibration. You step back into the light. Now it's time to follow the goods themselves. How they move, where they go, and what strange things they pick up along the way. The sun hangs low now, casting long golden streaks across the dust and stalls. You pass a merchant adjusting the canopy over her clay pots of fermented milk, and beyond that, a boy chasing a chicken in circles again. It's unclear whether it's the same boy or just an eternal cycle of poultry-related economics. But you're no longer lingering in the market. You're following the goods out of the city into the landscape that breathes life into Mali's trade system. You set off on foot, though before long, a group of traders on donkeys and camels waves you over. One offers you a spot on a woven saddle pad next to a sack of cola nuts and a jug of water. You accept. Who would? This is where the real movement happens. Trade routes. Roads made not of stone, but of memory, habit, and hoofprints. They link tropical forests to desert, savanna to coast. Some are wide and worn. Others are nothing more than trails passed down orally like songs. And today, you're riding one. Here's your historical anchor. The Mali Empire thrived partly because of its location between the gold-producing regions of the south, like Bambuk and Bure, and the salt-rich Sahara in the north. Goods didn't just move north-south either. East-west routes stretched toward Hausaland, toward the Senegal and Niger rivers, and even across to other West African kingdoms. Trade wasn't a luxury, it was lifeblood. As the caravan lumbers forward, the rhythm becomes oddly hypnotic. Camels sway like boats on an invisible tide. Donkeys snort with purposeful annoyance. You pass slow-rolling carts stacked with bundles of dyed fabric, palm oil, smoked fish, and yes, more salt. Always more salt. There's a system to it too. Each trader has a role. One man oversees the gold dust exchanges at rest stops. Another negotiates for safe passage through towns. A third tends the animals, mumbling endearments to a particularly temperamental camel named Rain Cloud, who refuses to walk in a straight line. You bond with Rain Cloud. He is chaos incarnate. You ride for hours, crossing dry plains where baobabs twist against the sky like old grandfathers leaning on invisible canes. You pass villages where women stir huge, clay pots of shea butter over open fires and children race along the caravan's path, hopping for tossed dates or a moment's amusement. In one village, the traders stop and unload a small fortune in forest goods, cola nuts, thick rubbery hides, dried herbs tied in bundles, and slabs of smoked meat that look like they could survive a century in a dusty cupboard. In exchange, they receive, not coins, but salt, fabric, iron tools, and more gold dust. And here's your quirky tidbit: cola nuts weren't just cargo. In many places, they were used to seal agreements. Two parties would each bite into a cola nut, chewing a bitter chunk as a gesture of mutual trust. The flavor, utterly awful apparently, but the symbolism, priceless. You're starting to understand the Mali economic logic. It's not about money as we know it. It's about networks, relationships, goods that are valued not just for their usefulness but for what they represent. Salt for survival, gold for prestige, cola for respect. The caravan moves again, winding toward a desert edge where the landscape flattens and the colors shift from green to pale brown. Traders grow quiet here. You've entered a transition zone where grasslands give way to sand, and the tempo of trade begins to change. A debate breaks out among two riders about whether a shortcut exists around a dried-out lake bed. One swears it's a myth. The other says he saw it once, guided by a fox spirit. You don't know which part to doubt more. Historians still argue whether many of these informal routes ever existed, or if they were just seasonal guesses dressed up in confidence. By dusk, you reach a desert waypoint, a low set of clay buildings clustered near a shallow well, where camels kneel dramatically and donkeys collapse like exhausted bureaucrats. A thin veil of dust hangs over everything. Traders unpack their goods, gold pouches are checked, and fires are lit for cooking. And here's a quiet moment of magic. One trader unfolds a bundle of indigo-dyed cloth from Janae, carefully revealing a gourd of honey inside, wrapped like treasure. Another offers dried mangoes from a forest village. Someone passes roasted peanuts. The wealth isn't just measured in dust and slabs, it's in flavors, textures, shared bites under starlight. One elder, wrapped in pale robes that blend into the sand, leans over and tells a story about his first trading journey, how he followed his uncle through a rainstorm in the south and ended up with a pouch full of gold and no idea what to do with it. He spent it all on fabric. "My wife still hasn't used half of it," he mutters. You laugh with the others. Rain Cloud the camel snorts in disapproval. And then, as the fire crackles and your muscles ache from travel, you notice something simple. This route, this journey, is the real currency. Without it, gold doesn't move. Salt doesn't reach the cities. Fabric doesn't drape over shoulders. It's not just about value, it's about connection. Each trade path is a kind of artery. Without them, the whole economy would seize up like an old joint in the cold. You lie back under the stars, hearing distant music. A trader's flute, maybe, or just the desert breathing. Tomorrow, you'll reach another city. But tonight, you're part of the road. Morning breaks not with the crow of a rooster, but with the sudden, sullen groan of rain cloud the camel, who, true to his name, is now refusing to stand. A cluster of traders push, pull, and plead. One offers him a date. Another threatens to turn him into stew. Rain Cloud remains unimpressed. You, however, are ready to move. By midday, your caravan rolls into the city of Janneh, where clay buildings rise like softened sandcastles and narrow streets are scented with fish, smoke, and the faint sweetness of drying rice. And as you pass under an archway carved with geometric designs, you're greeted by something that feels strangely out of place in a gold dust economy. Books. Yes, books. Dozens of them stacked on wooden tables tucked into niches, tied with string, wrapped in cloth. Handwritten manuscripts in Arabic, local languages, and a few so old that no one's entirely sure what they say anymore. This is no random market. This is Janneh's book quarter. And you've stumbled into one of the least flashy but most powerful forms of wealth in the Mali Empire: knowledge. Here's your historical anchor. By the 14th century, Mali, especially cities like Timbuktu and Janneh, had become major centers of Islamic scholarship and manuscript culture. Libraries held thousands of handwritten books, covering everything from astronomy to law, medicine to trade. Many were imported from North Africa, while others were copied locally by scholars and scribes. But here's the twist. These books were bought and sold just like any other commodity, using gold dust. You watch as a middle-aged scholar, his turban more scroll than fabric, weighs a pouch of dust for a book on Quranic law. Another trader argues over a price for a treatise on irrigation. Nearby, a young scribe dips his reed pen into ink made of soot and gum Arabic, copying a paragraph at a time with the precision of a jeweler. No coins change hands, no receipts, just weighed pouches and quiet negotiations. You lean closer and notice something. Many of the books have notes scribbled in the margins. Personal thoughts, trade advice, medical recipes, even jokes. One reads, "This man owes me 5 measures of millet. Do not let him forget." You laugh. Someone else did too, over 6 centuries ago. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some of these books doubled as ledgers. Families recorded debts, payments, marriages, and trades in the margins of manuscripts. In a sense, these books were both sacred texts and economic records, a merging of the spiritual and the practical. Try doing that with your credit card. You begin to realize, in Mali, wealth wasn't just stored in gold or salt. It was stored in ideas. Knowledge could be bought, hoarded, gifted, or passed on. Entire families gained prestige by possessing rare manuscripts, and scholars could earn a living copying or interpreting them, especially when traders needed legal guidance for a deal or help resolving a dispute. And here's something scholars still argue about. Did this intellectual economy affect Mali's resistance to coinage? Some suggest that the empire's deep respect for oral and written tradition created a cultural preference for more fluid systems of value. Fixed denominations might have felt too rigid, too limiting. Others argue that the manuscript culture simply coexisted with the gold economy without replacing it. Whatever the case, books here are precious, but not untouched. They're used, handled, debated over, and their value isn't just in the words, but in who's written in them, who's owned them, and what lives they've passed through. You spot one manuscript with 5 different ownership notes, each a mini biography in ink. You follow a young boy carrying a bundle of scrolls to a shaded study house. Inside, older scholars sit in a circle, reciting lines aloud, repeating them, then pausing to argue over a particular phrase. One of them stops, squints, and asks the boy to fetch a copy of a commentary written in Timbuktu 30 years ago. The boy returns with it in under a minute. You blink. It's not just a school, it's a filing system. A human database powered by tea, sunlight, and endless repetition. At some point, someone hands you a small book of poetry and gestures toward your gold pouch. You hesitate, then offer a conservative pinch. The scholar weighs it, shrugs, and adds a scrap of silver thread to sweeten the deal. You walk away with the book. You can't read half the script, but it smells of leather and smoke, and somehow that's enough. You spend the rest of the afternoon watching scribes at work. Their desks are tiny wooden benches, their inkstones worn smooth. Some copy religious texts. Others sketch diagrams of irrigation ditches or lunar cycles. All of them are paid in gold dust, stored in horn tips, gourd halves, or folded cloth. It's like tipping a musician or barista, except instead of a latte, you're buying eternal wisdom. As evening falls, traders light lanterns. The smell of roasted millet cakes drifts through the quarter. Somewhere, a student sings softly from a balcony, reciting lines from a history of Songhai kings. You sit on a low bench and look at your new poetry book, its edges rough, its ink slightly smeared. It may not shine like gold or preserve like salt, but here in Mali, it's just as precious. And it's about time you followed another kind of wealth, not one of words or even dust, but living, breathing trade animals. Hope you like hooves. The next morning, you wake to the unmistakable sound of braying, long, drawn out, and full of personality. It's not rain cloud this time. It's a new cast of characters entirely. You step outside into the street just as a large caravan prepares to depart. Not camels, not donkeys, though there are a few of those lounging in the shade like hungover nobles, but something else entirely: oxen. Dozens of them, yoked in pairs, tugging at creaky wooden carts heavy with hides, dried beans, gourds, and, strangely enough, live chickens in baskets that complain at every bump. You're about to get a crash course in what it takes to move wealth in a coinless empire. Muscle, hooves, and lots of shouting. Here's your historical anchor. Mali's trade system depended not just on what was being traded, but how it moved. Camels were ideal for desert routes, but for interior trade, especially in the wetter or forested southern regions, oxen, donkeys, and porters, yes, humans did most of the hauling. Roads weren't paved and carts had to be rugged, flexible, and easily repairable. It wasn't a fast system, but it worked. One trader lets you ride alongside him on the cart's edge. The cart squeaks in protest, the oxen grunt, and off you go, bumping your way into the heart of an economy that had never heard of wheel alignment. As you travel, you begin to notice just how varied the loads are. Some carts carry slabs of copper. Others have baskets of dried chilies, leather sandals, blocks of indigo dye, and mysterious bundles that smell strongly of fermented fish. It's not glamorous, but it's practical. Everything a village might need, or want, or trade. And tucked away in hidden pouches, as always, is gold dust. The carts may be loud and messy, but the transactions they enable remain quiet and precise. You stop at a crossroads where several trade routes converge. There's no signpost, just a cluster of trees, a shrine made of cowrie shells, and a group of traders arguing over who gets to sell first. One woman wins the debate by offering slices of mango to the others. Bribery by fruit, timeless. And here's your quirky tidbit. In certain regions of the empire, traders used live animals themselves as currency, not just for their labor, but as trade items. Oxen, goats, and chickens were bartered directly for goods. There are even records of bride prices being negotiated in cattle, with careful attention to the animals, coloring, health, and behavior. In other words, a goat with a good temperament might be worth more than a sack of beans and a handful of dust. You find yourself increasingly impressed by how physical this economy is. No metal discs stamped with faces, no paper notes, just carts creaking through rutted roads, animals snorting, goods bundled in reed mats and goat skins. It's gritty, it's honest, and it absolutely runs on breakfast. Which brings us to your next moment of learning. At a midday rest stop, traders unpack bundles of dried porridge balls made of millet, ground peanuts, and a hint of honey. You eat one. It's chewy, it's dense. It could stop a charging goat, but it fuels this mobile marketplace. You sit near a group of younger traders who are arguing over the best method for keeping gold dust safe while on the move. One insists on using hollowed-out cane tubes sealed with wax. Another prefers wrapping it in oiled leather. A third smirks and taps a tooth. Yes, some even hid their wealth in their mouths. Historians still argue whether these techniques were common or just clever one-offs. Some accounts suggest entire merchant families had secret methods of transporting dust to avoid theft. Others believe most traders simply relied on trust and social pressure. After all, in a world where everyone knows your face, stealing gold is less about crime and more about long-term self-sabotage. You pause to help one man mend a cartwheel. As you lift the axle, a small pouch tumbles out, tied with red string. He snatches it quickly and nods with respect. No need to ask what it is. You already know. This isn't just transportation. It's security. Movement itself is a kind of banking system, an informal network where trade happens in motion, where value isn't stored in vaults but carried across the empire's backbone, one creaky wheel at a time. Later, the group reaches a village nestled beside a wide bend in the Niger River. The traders park their carts beneath woven mats, and the animals are fed and brushed like royalty. The villagers come out to browse, trade, gossip, and laugh. There's no bank, no store, just commerce wrapped in community. You see gold dust traded for woven mats, for smoked catfish, for a new yoke carved by a local craftsman. The weighing happens casually, often on the ground using improvised scales, a strip of wood and 2 calabash bowls. No arguments, no calculators, just understanding. A woman passes you a calabash filled with a thick, chilled drink made from fermented millet. She points to your pouch and offers 2 fingers. You sprinkle out a tiny amount of dust onto a leaf. She nods, smiling. Trade completed. As night falls, fires crackle and drums begin to echo softly from a distant compound. Traders stretch out beside their carts. Oxen huff and lie down. Chickens settle grumpily into baskets. You lie on a mat and stare up at the stars, marveling at the idea that this whole intricate system, spanning deserts, forests, rivers, and languages, works without coins, banks, or paper. It works because people carry the system with them. In their carts, in their pouches, in their bones. And soon you'll see the most important trade hub of all. Not a palace, not a mosque, but a river port where everything converges. Sleep lightly. The boat leaves at dawn. You wake to the rhythmic creak of oars and the wet slap of water against wood. The boat is already drifting, pulled downstream by the slow, patient current of the Niger River. You're perched at the front of a long, narrow canoe, hollowed from a single tree, patched with resin, and steered by a man with arms like tree trunks and a voice as quiet as mist. Welcome to the floating arteries of the Mali Empire. Behind you, the rest of the canoe is filled with bundles, tightly wrapped hides, jars of fermented sauce, gourds of palm oil, bolts of cloth dyed in every hue of the riverbank sky. Nestled among the cargo, half asleep, are 3 traders and a chicken who clearly regrets its life choices. You adjust your seating on a woven mat and let the world slide by, one paddle stroke at a time. Here's your historical anchor. The Niger River wasn't just a source of water and fish, it was a superhighway. In the Mali Empire, river transport allowed bulk goods to move faster and farther than overland routes. Cities like Timbuktu, Janneh, and Gao sat along its meandering path, acting as transfer points where caravans from the desert met boats from the interior. It wasn't just geography, it was strategy. And for an empire without coinage, the river was also a neutral space. No tolls, no tariffs, just current and cooperation. Boats like yours carried gold dust southward and returned with salt, grain, and forest goods. On the water, transactions were fewer, but trust was just as important. You pass a small riverside village where children shout and wave. One woman offers a clay pot in exchange for dried fish tossed from a boat. No haggling, no delay, just a flick of the wrist and a nod. The river is teaching you something. Simplicity isn't always small. Sometimes it's smart. One trader, bored between destinations, begins pulling out his pouches and carefully inspecting his gold. You watch as he rolls grains between his fingers, listening to their sound. Yes, sound. Some say pure gold dust makes a slightly heavier tink when rubbed against the side of a gourd. Another trader scoffs and claims the real trick is to taste it. He licks a finger, dabs a grain, then grimaces. Not gold, he mutters, goat yard dirt. You stare. He shrugs, it happens. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some river traders carried tiny bits of polished glass or mica, shiny enough to mimic gold dust. These weren't used for trickery necessarily, but as fillers to balance weights or as emergency bribes. In a pinch, if you needed to get a basket of grain and your dust pouch was running low, a few glittery specks might just do the job, especially in low light. You drift past a trader port where boats are tied nose to nose like gossiping birds. There's no dock, just mud and long poles to wedge the canoes in place. Men and women wade into the shallows, offloading bundles onto broad baskets balanced on their heads. Someone opens a trade tent. Someone else starts cooking cassava cakes on a flat clay griddle. And here comes the weighing. You approach a cloth mat where transactions are already in full swing. There are no tables, no counters, just bowls, weights, pouches, and people who know exactly what a pile of smoked fish is worth in gold dust. The air smells like charcoal and cinnamon bark. You're handed a bowl and told to choose your share: 2 bundles of herbs, a bit of dried meat, and a small jar of honey. You sprinkle out your payment and wait. The trader doesn't even blink. She lifts her pouch, weighs your offering in a curled palm, and smiles. Trade complete. Here's a point historians still debate. Were river trades more honest than those on land? Some suggest the close quarters and slower pace forced better behavior. After all, you're literally stuck in a boat with your trading partner for hours or even days. Others argue the water routes made theft easier to hide, especially in thick riverbank groves. The truth is likely both. You share roasted yams with your boatmates as the sky turns hazy orange. The oarsman chants softly under his breath, a rhythmic song that keeps the paddles moving. It's part navigation, part tradition. He sings of sandbars, of crocodiles with names, of a hidden dock where you can trade for soapstone charms and never be cheated. You wonder how many of these stories are real. Then again, you've just spent an hour in a floating trade negotiation carried out with only eye contact, 3 hand gestures, and half a laugh. So maybe truth and story are more connected than you thought. The boat glides toward Timbuktu. The city doesn't rise with dramatic towers or grand palaces, just low clay buildings baked into the earth, blending with the riverbank like they were grown there. Still, you feel the shift. This is no village. This is a hub. You dock beside half a dozen other boats, all loaded to the brim with goods from every direction. The air smells of dust, sweat, fish, and something faintly metallic. Traders greet each other with elaborate handshakes. A boy runs past you, shouting prices in 3 languages. A woman balances a crate of dried dates on her head like a crown. And among them, scholars, scribes, and clerics, draped in deep blue, carrying not goods but scrolls. Even here, the economy hums with intellect as much as material. One last thing catches your eye. A man gently brushing dust from a carved ivory tusk, laying it beside a pouch of gold dust and a bowl of salt. That's it, the trifecta. Gold, salt, ivory, trade, memory, weight. And a river that moves it all. You step ashore in Timbuktu with sore legs, sun-warmed skin, and a growing suspicion that the dust in your pouch has somehow multiplied. Maybe it's just river sediment. Maybe it's magic. Or maybe it's the sheer gravitational pull of a city that practically breathes trade. The docks behind you fade as you follow the current of people flowing into the city. Traders, scholars, scribes, goat herders, and the occasional wide-eyed newcomer like you. The streets are a swirling blend of commerce and calm, where the sun hits the earth at an angle that makes everything look just a little more golden than it probably is. Timbuktu isn't loud, it's deliberate, structured. Like every trade, every conversation has already happened 1,000 times and simply repeats itself, patiently, with minor variations. You pass courtyards filled with woven baskets, stalls of dates and dried melon, and side streets where men squat in shade, slowly polishing metal jewelry with strips of linen. And unlike any market you've seen so far, there's something else here: silence. In pockets, tucked among the alleyways and clay buildings, are the quiet zones, places where words weigh more than gold. The libraries of Timbuktu. Some are private homes with locked wooden trunks. Others are larger, open to scholars and students. You press your ear to one doorway and hear only a soft scratch of pen on parchment, like a sleeping insect dragging its legs across stone. But you didn't come here to read today. You came to see what trade looks like at the height of its abstraction, the refined version, the economy of reputation. Here's your historical anchor. In cities like Timbuktu, trade went beyond barter and weight. Merchants operated on credit, using long-standing relationships, verbal promises, and social accountability to move goods without immediate payment. A man might receive 10 bolts of cloth on Monday and not pay for them until after the rainy season. Trust was the true currency. You watch it unfold in a sunlit plaza where two traders, one in emerald green, the other in faded white, sit cross-legged facing one another. Between them, nothing. No scales, no gold, no products. Just a spoken agreement concluded with a firm nod and a shared sip of tamarind water. Nothing is written down. Yet 5 different people watched it happen. That's enough. Here's your quirky tidbit. In Timbuktu's scholarly circles, some contracts were written, but not in ledgers. They were embedded in poetry. Certain deals were memorialized in verse, woven into metaphors, coded in rhythm. Only the parties involved and maybe a clever griot could decipher the actual terms. It was legal code as lullaby. You're invited to sit under a fig tree with an elderly trader who has sold everything from lapis beads to Nubian perfume. He pulls a small, waxed pouch from his sleeve. Not gold, not salt, but dried star anise. He offers you one, along with this advice. Trade slow, trade honest, trade like someone's listening. He tells you about a time he trusted a man from Walata with an entire shipment of saffron. Didn't ask for payment. Didn't even see him off. Just waited. And sure enough, 3 months later, a different caravan arrived with the exact return, plus a gift of carved ebony spoons. You ask how he knew he wouldn't be cheated. He grins, because I wouldn't have cheated. That's the only guarantee that ever comes back. Historians still argue how formal these systems were. Some suggest that entire trade clans built networks of credit that lasted generations. Others believe it was more ad hoc, a system born of necessity and kept in motion by gossip, honor, and frequent appearances at weddings. In one of Timbuktu's courtyards, you see traders conducting what looks like an auction, but nothing is shouted. Instead, buyers whisper their offers to a go-between who relays them to the seller. It's a game of telephone conducted entirely in hushed tones. No bids are public, no prices are fixed, and no one wants to be the loud one. In this city, confidence comes quietly. Later, you're shown to a house where a group of women are preparing indigo dye for trade. Their hands are stained deep blue, their laughter easy. You ask if they get paid in gold. One of them rolls her eyes. Sometimes, but mostly we get what we ask for. You ask what she means. Soap, salt, palm wine, a new roof, my cousin's school fees. And you realize something you hadn't quite absorbed until now. In Mali's gold economy, gold isn't always the goal. Sometimes it's just the middle step, a translator, a placeholder for a basket of things someone really needs. That night in a quiet inn made of mud brick and patience, you sit on a cushion and sip sweetened tea with a young merchant. He opens his journal, not a ledger but a worn notebook filled with sketches of his trade routes, names of people he trusts, and a few drawings of camels who wronged him. This one, he says, pointing to a particularly smug-looking doodle, bit me in the knee and then spat on my turban. I still owe him a grudge. You both laugh, and beneath that laughter is the hum of something timeless, the unspoken truth that value isn't just measured in weight, but in stories, relationships, reputations, in how long someone takes to return a borrowed gourd, in how well they remember your father's name, in whether they trade like someone's listening. Tomorrow, you'll head to the countryside to see how gold is actually found, where it hides, who finds it, and how the smallest grain can tip the balance of a village. But tonight, you sleep in a city held together not by walls or rulers or coins, but by trust. Section 11. Morning finds you not on the river or beside a merchant's mat, but deep in the countryside, where the rhythm of trade begins not with a handshake, but with a pickaxe. You've joined a group traveling southeast, beyond Timbuktu's calm adobe sprawl and into the brushlands and forests near the Bambuk and Bura regions. These places don't boast mosques or markets, they hum with a quieter urgency. Villages here are less concerned with philosophy and more with what lies beneath their feet. Welcome to Gold Country. The path grows rougher. Trees press in, tangled and low, their leaves glittering with dew. You duck under vines and swat at mosquitoes that seem uniquely interested in your earlobes. After half a day's travel, you smell smoke, then fire pits, then people. You step into a clearing bustling with life, a small mining village. No signs, no walls, just lean huts, cooking fires, and everywhere the smell of dirt and sweat. A group of men and boys are waist-deep in hand-dug pits, hauling up baskets of earth. Women sit nearby at low wooden tables, slowly sifting soil through wide, shallow trays. You watch and soon spot it, the flash of something yellow in the dust. Tiny, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably gold. Here's your historical anchor. Mali's gold was sourced primarily from placer mining, gathering gold dust and flakes from riverbeds, surface deposits, and shallow pits. It didn't require massive tools or explosives, but it did demand labor, precision, and time. Whole families often participated, and gold-producing regions were tightly integrated into the empire's trade routes. You kneel beside a young girl no older than 10 who swirls a tray of muddy water in slow circles. The heavier particles settle. She tilts the tray just so, letting the water slip over the edge. A few shimmering flakes remain, clinging stubbornly to the bottom. She grins. You grin back. The gold is raw, unrefined. It'll be cleaned, weighed, and eventually traded. But here it's more than currency, it's livelihood, identity, pride. And it's everywhere. Even the dust in the air glimmers slightly. You wonder if you'll ever feel clean again. One miner tells you a local belief, that gold only shows itself to those with honest intentions. The earth knows who's greedy, he says, not quite joking. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some miners in these regions tied feathers or small bells to their tools, not for decoration, but to ward off spirits believed to protect the gold. Others poured a bit of their morning millet porridge into the soil before digging, a quiet offering to the earth. Gold here wasn't just a resource, it was a living presence with moods and boundaries. You're invited to try sifting a basket yourself. You accept confidently and nearly drop the whole thing into the water. The mud splashes. A boy nearby cackles. You manage to recover some sediment and swirl it like you've seen the others do. One fleck appears. You feel as proud as if you just discovered an entire vein. Historians still argue how centralized Mali's control over gold production really was. Some believe the empire tightly restricted where and how gold was mined, sending agents to oversee collection and enforce tribute. Others suggest a more decentralized model, where local rulers or communities mined freely, offering a portion of their yield in exchange for imperial protection. What's clear is this: gold didn't belong to the empire, it flowed through it. You walk the edge of the mining pits and find yourself near a shaded corner where a group of elders sits weaving thin leather cords. They're making pouches, Small, drawstring bags lined with oiled cloth or resin to keep gold dust safe from moisture, and more importantly, from escape. You watch as one woman inspects each pouch for tiny leaks, pinching and twisting like a chef judging pastry. One elder notices your interest and holds up a pouch the size of your thumb. "This," he says, "fed my family for 2 months." You do the math. That's a few grams of gold, maybe less. Suddenly, every pinch of dust you've seen traded in markets and boats and city squares takes on a new gravity. It's not light, not symbolic. It's sweat turned solid. You sit with a group of children who are shaping clay into mock weights, little figurines in the shape of turtles, fish, and lizards. You recognize them from the weighing houses. One girl tells you which animal equals how much millet. You ask how she knows. "My grandmother said so," she shrugs. And you realize the gold economy isn't just about what's dug or traded. It's about memory. Knowledge passed hand to hand, story to story, a whisper chain of value. Evening falls and the miners return from the pits, their bodies coated in streaks of red earth. Dinner is simple: steamed plantains, a stew of greens, and roasted grasshoppers that you're politely pressured into trying. You chew slowly, crunchily, regret nothing. Afterward, people gather around a fire. A griot begins to sing, a song about a king who traded his weight in gold for a single elephant tusk carved with the names of his ancestors. It's probably not true, or maybe it is. Either way, it sounds just like history. And tomorrow, you'll follow that dust again, see where it goes, how it's guarded, and what it means to carry something so small and yet so powerful. Section 12. The morning air smells of ironwood smoke and dew-soaked leaves. You rise early with the miners, but today you're not staying in the pits. Today you follow the gold not to a market or a boat, but to a place less public, more powerful, a weighing house. You travel north again, the forest giving way to open plains. Traders pass on foot, heads balanced with baskets. A man pushes a cart of palm oil jars. Children dart across your path chasing a runaway goat, laughing so hard they forget to be embarrassed. By midday, you reach a village known not for its size but for its weights. A quiet place where some of the most important work in Mali's gold economy happens. Not mining, not trading, but measuring. Because without weights, gold dust means nothing. The weighing house is made of mud brick and shaded by a wide acacia tree. No signs, no decorations. Just a low doorway, a thick curtain of leather strips, and the faint clink of brass inside. You enter slowly. Inside, it's cool and dark, and the floor is packed earth, swept smooth. On a wooden bench sits a weighing master, probably in his 60s, eyes sharp as fishhooks. Before him, a balanced scale. To his right, a row of tiny brass figurines, frogs, ducks, turtles, camels, lizards. These are not toys. These are currency. Here's your historical anchor. The Mali Empire used a complex, standardized, but regionally varied system of weights to measure gold dust. These weights were often cast in the shapes of animals or abstract symbols, each one representing a fixed mass, some just a gram or two, others much larger. Traders and weigher officials used them to ensure fairness in transactions. And here's your quirky tidbit. The most trusted weights were not held by the traders, but by the weight keepers, a kind of sacred bureaucracy of balance. In some regions, these men were appointed by local rulers. In others, they were passed down in families like heirlooms. Many believed a poorly calibrated weight wasn't just an error, it was dishonor. You watch as a trader approaches the bench. He offers a pouch. The weigher opens it slowly, like it might contain fire, and pours the dust into a shallow bowl. A flick of his wrist, a gentle shake, and the glittering pile settles. Now the dance begins. The master selects a turtle-shaped weight and places it on one side of the scale. On the other, dust. The bowls wobble. He adjusts, adding a tiny lizard. The balance swings, settles. A nod. The trader receives a token from the weigher, a symbol of weight confirmed. No paper, no receipt, just mutual recognition. He bows and departs. You get to try. Your gold pouch is smaller than most, but the weigher doesn't blink. He weighs it with quiet care, using 3 weights shaped like birds. He writes nothing down, but he hums, a soft, rhythmic tune like counting by melody. He tells you the amount, then offers a smaller pouch in exchange, filled with beads. Decorative but valuable in certain markets. He's making a point. Gold is measured, but not always spent. Sometimes it's exchanged later, remembered in reputation. Sometimes it's merely weighed so you know what you hold. And here's something historians still debate. Did Mali have a central standard for weights, or did each region enforce its own version? Some scholars argue that weight designs varied by city, while others claim the figurines were so widespread and trusted that traders learned to adapt intuitively. Either way, it worked. Transactions rarely stalled for lack of agreement. You're shown a locked chest in the corner, an archive of old, unused weights. One shaped like a coiled snake, another like a crescent moon. Some too worn to use, their measurements uncertain, but still revered. Their tools, their ancestors. Outside, you sit with a young apprentice who's learning to make new weights using beeswax molds and brass smelted from discarded tools. He shows you how he pours the wax, carves the shape, coats it in clay, bakes it, then fills the mold with molten brass. His fingers are scarred but steady. His newest weight is a bat. You'll need that in the evening market, he jokes. They raise prices at sunset. You laugh and he grins. The weighing house is quiet now. The work is slow, deliberate. Every decision is a miniature ceremony. Before you leave, the master weigher gives you a tiny brass fish, smaller than your thumb. Not legal, he says, just a memory. You accept it like an artifact. As you step outside, the sun feels hotter. The world moves faster, but you carry that fish in your pouch now, proof that in Mali's gold economy, weight isn't just mass. It's meaning. It's math and myth combined. You walk through the village and see a woman trading her weighed dust for a copper bracelet. A child accepts a sweet in exchange for delivering a message. Nearby, an elder recounts the story of the time a crooked weigher was chased out of town by geese. Apparently, they were enchanted geese. You don't ask too many questions. Tonight, you'll sleep near the edge of the desert again. Tomorrow, you'll meet the king. Or rather, you'll meet his wealth. His retinue. His gold, carried not in chests but in spectacle. You wake to a sound that doesn't quite register at first, a kind of low, rolling thunder without clouds. It grows louder, steadier, until it becomes unmistakable. Hooves. You scramble to your feet, brush off the dust, and climb a small ridge. Below you, cutting across the plain like a drifting constellation, is a caravan, but not like any you've seen before. This one glitters. There are camels, yes, hundreds of them, but also horses, banners, robes dyed in brilliant indigo and red, parasols the size of fishing nets, and a procession of servants in gleaming white. Gold flashes from necks, wrists, and saddle cloths. Even the camels wear necklaces. This isn't trade. This is theater. You've just caught a glimpse of Imperial Mali at its most ostentatious, the royal entourage on the move. Here's your historical anchor. The Mali Empire was famously wealthy, and no ruler made that clearer than Mansa Musa. His 14th century pilgrimage to Mecca became the stuff of legend, not just because he made the Hajj, but because of how he did it. Tens of thousands accompanied him. He brought so much gold to Cairo that he caused inflation for over a decade. Coins may not have been used in Mali, but gold could still flood a currency system abroad. You descend the hill slowly and fall into the shadow of the procession. A guard eyes you but doesn't interfere. You're not a threat, just dust-covered and wide-eyed. Nearby, a man sharpens a long ceremonial staff made of polished ebony and capped with a gold finial. Another feeds dates to a camel draped in silk. You're invited to sit with a group of attendants resting beneath a baobab tree. They pass you a gourd of thick tamarind juice and a basket of roasted kola nuts. "This is just the midsection," one says casually. "The musicians are up front." Musicians. You jog forward and soon hear them. A dozen men playing balafons, flutes, and drums, seated on moving platforms hauled by donkeys. The sound is soft, hypnotic, rising and falling like the rhythm of a tide. Their role isn't just entertainment, it's signaling. Each rhythm tells the caravan what's happening, when to slow, when to stop, when to prepare for an audience. Here's your quirky tidbit. It's said that in royal processions, certain officials were designated gold carriers. They didn't just hold the dust, they scattered it. Literally. In some ceremonies, small handfuls were thrown to the crowd as a gesture of imperial generosity. The empire had so much gold that sometimes its value was more symbolic than material. You watch as one servant passes a leather bag of gold dust to a griot, who immediately launches into a praise song for an arriving dignitary. No coins change hands. No need. Just the grain and the gratitude. As the caravan sets up camp for the night, tents billowing like desert clouds, you find yourself drawn to a quieter corner where scribes sit cross-legged, copying notes into wax tablets and folded scrolls. They are not merchants or traders. They are historians. You lean closer. One of the scribes is sketching a camel not for art, but to document the items it carries. Bolts of dyed cotton, a silver goblet, one bundle of paper, and 7 units of gold dust. You recognize the style of writing. It's administrative, functional, precise. And here's something historians still argue about. How much control did the emperor have over Mali's gold, really? Some suggest Mansa Musa commanded exclusive access to raw gold and tightly controlled its flow. Others think that while he held ceremonial and political control, everyday trade continued more or less independently. What's clear is this: imperial gold was about visibility. It created awe, built alliances, and reinforced the emperor's image as not just a man, but a blessing. One storyteller near the cooking tents recounts how, on the road to Cairo, Mansa Musa gave away so much gold that entire regions adjusted their economies. She says the emperor's advisors had to buy back gold just to stabilize prices again. Too much good, she laughs, is also a problem. You walk among the tents, each one its own little micro-world of silk, spices, textiles, and food. One smells of grilled lamb and cloves, another of sweat and perfume. A group of singers practice a chant in a language you don't recognize. 2 young boys chase each other with sticks made to look like scimitars. A man invites you to sit beside a lantern and polish a ceremonial shield. In return, he tells you the story of the king's robe, woven from Sahel cotton, dyed with local indigo, and embroidered with gold thread so fine it can slip through a needle made of fishbone. Too much gold, he says, and it falls apart. Balance, that's the lesson. He tosses you a melon slice and smiles. That, and don't let the camel eat your tent ropes. You laugh, it's an important lesson. The sun sinks below the plain and the desert breathes out a cool wind. Fires flicker. Drums begin again, this time slower, more private. Somewhere near the emperor's tent, griots are retelling the deeds of Sundiata Keita, the empire's founder. A tale of fate, prophecy, and a boy who couldn't walk until he had to. You lie back against a bundle of cotton and stare at the stars. The caravan sleeps, wrapped in silk and gold. And you realize, coins may be easy to carry, but dust, stories, and spectacle, those leave a mark. The caravan is gone by sunrise, moved on like a golden mirage, leaving behind only hoofprints, ashes, and a scattering of sunflower seeds that someone evidently spilled in the night. You gather your things and follow a lesser path eastward, toward one of the empire's lesser-known treasures, the regional markets where everyday people, not royalty, hold the economy in their calloused hands. You're headed to a border village near Mali's eastern frontier, where the empire's influence thins, and the patchwork of cultures becomes more vibrant, more unpredictable. The language changes slightly. The smells shift, more fermented foods, more dried fruit, more wood smoke laced with spicy tamarind. You pass a roadside seller offering ground shea butter in carved wooden bowls and another selling bundles of something that looks suspiciously like hedgehog jerky. The market, when you reach it, is already in full bloom. It stretches beneath an open canopy of woven mats supported by crooked wooden poles and optimism. No stalls, no signage, just orderly chaos, goods laid out on cloths, baskets, mats, even the backs of donkeys. Every foot of space is filled with texture, ropey tobacco leaves, glinting beads, woven fans, leather sandals, dusty cola nuts, powdered indigo, and yes, gold. But not in coins, never in coins. Here's your historical anchor. While Mali's imperial wealth was vast, the majority of its economy was decentralized, run by farmers, fisherfolk, craftspeople, and traveling traders. In these regional markets, gold dust was used, yes, but it shared space with bartered goods, labor exchanges, and trusted credit relationships. It was fluid, adaptable, deeply personal. You crouch beside a woman who's trading dried okra powder for a calabash of honey. The exchange is negotiated quietly, with a few hand gestures, a short sentence in a language you don't recognize, and the tiniest sprinkle of gold dust to seal the deal. You blink, and it's done. On to the next trade. Nearby, you see a group of blacksmiths, their arms glistening with soot and sweat, negotiating over a shipment of copper bars. No scales, no gold, just a set of agreed-upon weights measured in fistfuls and familiarity. One man points at a bracelet, raises 3 fingers, then hands over what looks like a small bag of ground cinnamon. It's not cinnamon. You watch a teenager trade a carved wooden comb for a half-used spool of blue thread. It's all contextual, all relative. Value here is a living thing. And here's your quirky tidbit. In some regions, people use special gold measuring spoons made of wood or bone, carved to represent specific amounts. Some were family heirlooms. Others were adorned with symbols meant to ward off theft, like the crocodile, whose gaze was said to follow a dishonest buyer all the way home. You sit near a food seller grilling plantain stuffed with spicy peanut paste. You trade a small gold flake, no bigger than a fingernail shaving, for 2, plus a gourd of baobab juice. You ask the price, but she only shrugs. "If I know your face," she says, "the price is better." Historians still debate whether this level of informal trade meant economic inefficiency or flexibility. Some argue that without coins, large-scale record-keeping, or taxation via money, the system was limited. Others see it as proof of a deeply adaptable economy, one where personal relationships did the work of ledgers, and where the market could flex with harvests, droughts, and border changes. You wander deeper into the market and stumble upon a small music stall. A man offers you a 1-string fiddle. You decline. He then offers you a song in exchange for a handful of dust. You accept. His voice is thin but steady, and the lyrics are improvised, about your dusty boots, your curious gaze, and how your hat makes you look like a confused bird. You laugh so hard you nearly pay him twice. A group of children is nearby, trading shells and smooth stones. No gold here, just value as imagination. 1 stone, they tell you, is worth 3 frogs and a cloud. You don't question it. Later, as the sun begins to dip, the market softens. People pack up, fold blankets, count inventory, recount stories. Someone lost a chicken. Someone else found it. A small group gathers around a griot, who's telling a story about a trade gone so badly wrong that it caused a village to invent sarcasm. You find a shady spot beneath a woven mat and sip water from a calabash. The woman beside you, chewing roasted peanuts, leans over and whispers, "This is where the empire breathes." And she's right. Because here, at the far edge of Mali's reach, in a place where Arabic and Bambara blur into a song, the gold economy is not some towering monument. It's dust in the wind, yes, but also gossip, trust, habit, and joy. You watch a final trade, a carved stool for 2 ducks and a spoonful of dust, and it's perfect. Tomorrow, you'll begin your journey back. But tonight, you sleep among the rustle of straw, the scent of roasted maize, and the quiet ticking of trade winding down. You wake with the market already half assembled around you, canvas mats unfurling like lily pads, morning smoke curling from clay stoves, and voices trading greetings, prices, and mild gossip before the sun has even warmed the dirt. Someone offers you a steamed yam. You accept. It tastes like home, even if you're still far from it. But now it's time to follow the gold one last time, not to where it begins or ends, but to where it rests. Quietly, respectfully, in a place many traders never see but every serious merchant knows, the Royal Reserve. You travel northwest back toward the empire's core. The land flattens, then rises in red-dusted plateaus. Towns appear more frequently now, larger, more structured, each with a clear trade center, a mosque, and something else, a whisper of regulation. You hear it in the way guards inspect traders, wares at the gate, not rudely, but thoroughly. You feel it in the consistency of the weights used. You see it in the carved tablets that track tribute, stored in local archives like quiet ledgers of obligation and gratitude. And eventually, after days of travel, you reach a walled compound on the edge of Nyani, the imperial capital. There are no banners, no fanfare. Just a wide gate flanked by stoic guards and the faint shimmer of dust hanging in the air, as if the earth itself exhales gold here. You're ushered inside not as a tourist, but as a learner. A griot vouched for you. You're told to keep quiet, keep your hands in sight, and not sneeze on anything shiny. The reserve is less a vault and more a treasury compound. Several low buildings with thick walls, small windows, and floors packed hard and clean. Inside are rows of wooden chests, each locked, sealed, and marked with pictographs denoting contents. Not just gold, but ivory, salt, cloth, manuscripts, weapons, and oddly, ginger root. Here's your historical anchor. While Mali didn't use coins, it maintained an official gold reserve controlled by the emperor and his council. This reserve wasn't for everyday transactions, but for state diplomacy, military campaigns, religious gifts, and grand displays. It acted as a stabilizer, an economic deep breath. You're shown a storage room where jars of gold dust are lined on low shelves like pickled treasure. Each jar sealed with wax or cloth, each tied with a tag, some made of folded leather, others inked onto old palm leaves. No two are exactly alike. Nearby, a clerk uses a brass spoon to inspect the purity of a sample. He blows gently on the dust, then tastes it. You flinch. He raises a brow. Not eating it, he says, tasting the clay. Some regions leave a flavor. You feel both educated and ridiculous. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some parts of the empire, dust was transported in dried gourds or even hollowed out eggs, sealed with resin. The idea wasn't just security. It was about keeping the gold alive, preserved in organic containers that mirrored its natural origins. You pass a workroom where a scribe copies inventory onto a board made of smoothed goat skin. The pen is a reed. The ink smells of vinegar and tamarind. He doesn't look up as he writes, but murmurs the numbers aloud. You realize this reserve isn't a dead place. It hums with purpose. And here's a debate historians still wrestle with. How fixed was the gold reserve? Was it closely guarded, rarely touched? Or was it more fluid, used when needed, replenished with tribute, adaptable to crisis? Some records suggest periodic audits, others hint at a more ceremonial approach. Whatever the truth, this much is certain. The reserve was real, and it mattered. As you stand before one particularly ancient-looking chest, a steward explains its story. This one, he says, contains gold collected from 3 regions over 20 years, never once spent. It's not for use. It's a memory, a collection of loyalty, a display of Mali's reach. It's not money, he adds, it's proof. Outside, the sun is beginning to lower. You sit on a low wall watching merchants arrive with tribute. Sacks of grain, dried fish, shea butter, bundles of rare herbs. A few carry gold, most don't, and no one seems to mind. Because Mali's wealth was never just in dust. It was in systems, in stories, in the willingness to trust a scale, a stranger, or a handshake. You take one last look around the compound. No gold glitters in the open. No guards flex their muscles. It's quiet, even boring. But that's the point. You started this journey curious about how Mali managed a gold-based economy with no coins. Now you know it didn't need coins. It had people. And that dusty, patient, intricate is worth more than gold. The air grows cooler now, softer against your skin. The last voices of the market fade into silence, and somewhere in the distance, a drumbeat slows into memory. You're no longer walking dusty roads or weighing flakes of gold. You're just resting, breathing in, breathing out, with a quiet kind of knowing tucked behind your eyes. You've journeyed through deserts, rivers, villages, and vaults. You've tasted millet beside miners and traded laughter in forgotten towns. You've seen the gleam of gold not as luxury, but as language, whispered between hands, trusted across time, and kept alive not by metal, but by memory. And now you're here, wrapped in a stillness older than maps. No coins clinking in your ears, just the soft hum of a world that once ran on dust and dignity, on shared spoons and secret poems, on stories that stuck to your skin like warmth. So let go now. Let your thoughts drift like the Niger, slow and certain. Let your breath deepen, like the rhythm of a caravan settling into camp. Let your body melt into the earth, because you've earned this rest. You are part of the story now. And when you dream, perhaps the gold will follow. But gently, quietly, like history always does. Sweet dreams.